Amplify, the podcast for accounting firm growth. I'm your host, Angie Grissom. Today, I'm so excited to dive into the topic of increased demand for advisory services. Here with us today is my good friend, Josh Beck. Prior to assuming the role of managing partner in 2020, Josh served as a partner in MarksNelson's advisory services area. He was a member of the firm's executive committee and a leader of the real estate industry niche. He joined MarksNelson as leader of the location strategies practice after merging in the St. Louis-based corporate site selection and economic development consulting firm that he founded. Josh has the unique experience of helping his clients shape and implement plans for growth. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Always great to see you, Angie. Looking forward to the discussion.
I'm always impressed with the things you all are doing. So let's jump right in. So Josh, what does advisory mean to you? Do you view it as new services or advising within transactional compliance services or both? What do you think?
Oh, what a great question. I'll tell you, so you mentioned there in the intro that I'm a non-CPA managing partner that had my own small business that I had merged in with MarksNelson actually back in 2015. And when I think of advisory, I always think about when I was that small business owner. And when I wanted a contract reviewed, I called my attorney. When I wanted space, I called my real estate broker. But the discussion and dialogue with my accounting firm, my accountant, my CPA, was just an ongoing, constant dialogue. I'd come in to get my tax return, but honestly, I always look forward to getting the tax return and then pivoting the conversation to, hey, here's my plans for the coming year. What do you think? Or I'm thinking about this new strategic hire. What do you think? Is that a good move? Or I'm thinking about even selling my company. What do you think? Is that a good move? I wanted to have a dialogue with this person that was well beyond just the debits and credits, that they found on the accounting work and the tax work that they did. It did for us in large part just because it was such a trusting relationship that I had with my CPA. Aside from my spouse, this was the only other person on the planet that saw all of my financials. And so when I thought about a big strategic decision and I wanted to have somebody that saw the total picture, including the financial side of it, my CPA was the person that I talked to. And so now that I'm managing partner at MarksNelson, we just carry that spirit all the way through and say a lot of our clients, they trust us that we're handling the compliance work accurately. They want to talk about not just how to safeguard their business, but how to grow their business and how we meet them in that conversation and become that true business advisor. To me, that's what advisory really means. And so I'll tell you, for us to get the vernacular correct, we actually spent a lot of time on this as MarksNelson. We separate what we call advisory capabilities from consulting services. And so advisory capabilities to us is being able to, when that client calls, just like Josh did with my old CPA, and says, hey, I'm thinking about this, what do you think? That you can, on the spot, be able to understand the individual, understand their business, understand their industry, and be able to provide a bit of advice during that phone call or during that impromptu meeting. And that's different than consulting services that may provide the solution that they need. Perhaps the advice that you would give is that they need a CRM program. The consulting service is actually the service that comes in and provides them, selection and implementation of a CRM system or something like that, or ERP system. And so providing the solution versus providing the advice on the spot, that's sort of how we separate the definition between advisory capabilities and consulting services. And for us, we want all of our people to have advisory capabilities, and we want to have a good portfolio of consulting services that provide solutions relevant to our clients' needs.
Absolutely. I have found in this profession that we absolutely are our client's most trusted business advisor. And a lot of times we have to teach people to remove the blinders and only focus on the things that they went to school for, sort of a check the box, cross the T, dot the I. So what you're talking about is a true mindset shift. And Josh, I can't tell you how many times throughout and after the pandemic where I had managing partners and people that we were coaching call and say, Angie, my client called me and they said, we absolutely would not still be in business had it not been for you. And I love your example of actually being a client in that arena, being able to say, you know what, I need somebody that can direct me and guide me, who's looking at the entire picture. it is so incredibly valuable to have that. So,
Agreed.
so is advisory growth obviously part of your strategic plan? Tell me about that.
It is. It's absolutely part of our strategic growth plan. It's a significant part of our strategic growth plan. But I'd say for us, it is both compliance and advisory. It's not an either or discussion for us. Providing the compliance services to our clients, tax and audit and attest, which is a highly regulated space, but justifiably, it's an important public service that needs to be provided according to the regulations. All of those things are a great privilege and an honor to provide clients. And we do that in addition to the services on the advisory side.
Love that. You have such a great strong firm, and I know everybody's on board with what you're doing, but what advice do you have for someone trying to win over fellow partners to advisory? So many firms have this in their strategic plan, but they get pushback. What is advisory? Why should we care about it? Is it too difficult to go into? Help me define it. So what advice do you have to win over fellow partners?
For our firm, it became an easy conversation with the partners on, is this something we should do? Primarily because our staff wanted to do it, our team members wanted to be more advisory, and our clients were asking for it. And when those two things are in place, it sort of becomes a no-brainer for us. We also found that it contributes to the profitable growth of the firm. So that's a nice added bonus as well. So those three things in place made this a no-brainer for us. And I think for most firms, they probably found something very similar. But someone looking to get into this space, I'll tell you some of the challenges that we ran into were really, you mentioned earlier, this is a mindset. The advisory capabilities is a mindset. And that's very true. So having somebody who is trained technically on the debits and credits, where there's typically a right and a wrong answer, to step into a space to ask questions about a client's business, where there's a bit of an intimidation factor on what if the client comes back with something that I don't know the answer to, or perhaps
Yes.
even worse, there's not
Yes.
necessarily a right and a wrong answer. There's a what's right for this client in this situation. There's a bit more of an art form to it. That's a bit intimidating. And so a few of the things that we did was we said, if we're going to ask you to have this advisory capability, we can't expect that you're going to be able to be all things to all people. And so we as a firm are going to specialize in certain industries, and we're going to equip our people with knowledge of the industries that they specialize in. So for us, that's right now, real estate, insurance, manufacturing, distribution, and construction. And we have niche-based growth teams that you've helped advise as well and helped us grow those teams. But they spend time, for example, each month coming together with L&D topics that are not just based on the technical areas where they provide service, but are also about what's happening in that industry more broadly, to help them understand the client when they're interacting with them, understand the lingo that they're using, understanding some of the opportunities and challenges that other clients in their space are facing. And they just feel a little more comfortable then when they're in that room having that conversation that tends to go down the advisory path. So industry specialization is something that was a big boost for us to go down that path. We also spent a lot of time though with our folks just in the more broad category of being okay to step outside your comfort zone and maybe have a question that comes from a client where you don't know the answer on the spot. And we're going to make sure that you're feeling comfortable to say, hey, that's a great question. I don't know that answer, but I do have somebody back at the office or perhaps a partner that we've engaged that I can connect you with a really good solution. And so give them that ability and give them the training to be able to be in that room and be comfortable when they're in that room has really boosted us as well.
That's great. I think equipping people with the technical knowledge, the industry information is so critically important. And we talk about the trust equation in some of our trainings, the David Maister trust equation, which is trust equals credibility plus reliability plus intimacy, all divided by a low level of self-interest. And the thing about credibility is your CPA designation, it's your law degree, it's all of these things, but credibility is a moving target. In order to remain credible, you have to do exactly what you're talking about and continually educate your team and invest in them so that they know what's happening. One of the other barriers, if you will, other than just being afraid of not knowing the answer, which is absolutely, I think, one of the top barriers. One of the other barriers is pricing and packaging and delivery of advisory services. So, what does that look like? How do you upskill your team to handle those components?
Yeah, so at Marks Nelson, we go to market by industry niche, and we manage the services and delivery and personnel by service line and by department. And so, what does that mean for us? So going to market by industry niche. I'll use the example of our real estate team. I remember, a long time ago, like many firms, if you sort of looked at some of our marketing materials that we handed out to clients, it was, here's all of the tax services that we provide, and here's all the attest services that we provide, and here's all the accounting services we provide, and here's all the other specialty consulting services we provide. And it was just this overwhelming list that you would hand to clients, and it really did not have any impact whatsoever. So instead of that, we really evolved towards when we go to talk to a real estate client, we think about pre-development, development, management, and exit of a real estate asset, right? The way that they view the world, not necessarily the way that an accounting firm would view the world. And we think about the services that are relevant for each one of those stages of development, right? So we go to market talking to them as a team of experts across departments, talking about the solutions that we have that are relevant for them at the moment that they're in, the cycle that they're in, relevant to their real estate assets. But then we do manage our teams by department, as I said, whether it's our tax department, our accounting service department, or otherwise, to make sure that quality control is in place. And in fact, for Marks Nelson, I mentioned earlier, there's some regulated services such as attest that are a great public service, and we have to make sure those are provided effectively. For Marks Nelson, the solution was actually to separate that into an entirely different firm. So we operate under an alternative practice structure where Marks Nelson LLC is a licensed CPA firm. Marks Nelson Advisory is not a licensed CPA firm. So we have a totally separate group, totally different partners, a managing partner that runs that CPA firm as well, to make sure that they're never overly influenced by the growth that's coming from the advisory side and are able to operate the way that they need to according to regulations. And make sure the quality control is there. And then again, internally here to Marks Nelson Advisory, our tax departments and others oversee that quality control of their various groups. When it comes to pricing, I will say in general, staff that have more specialized capabilities and experience and expertise can demand higher rates. And we've also found that clients that are drawn to us, not just for compliance services, but more of our experience and expertise in certain specialized areas like industries, and are utilizing more than one or even two service offerings, they tend to have a tolerance for higher rates and are willing to pay those higher rates as well.
Sure.
So when you package those together, again, I say make sure that you're speaking to the client effectively when you're going to market. Do that in a way that is relevant to them. Internally, make sure that you're managing your personnel in a way that maintains quality control. And then understand your pricing strategies, that you're going to have a tolerance for higher fees when you offer more than one service, and you do so in a way that you have a reputation and a skill set in an advisory area, not just a compliance area.
That's excellent. There's such a great impact when you do that kind of work, and people are willing to invest more in it for sure. This has been a great conversation, Josh, and I'm looking forward to diving right back in after this brief word from the Association for Accounting Marketing.
Whether part of a team or a department of one, individuals responsible for growth in the accounting profession join AIM to advance their careers and contribute at a high level to their firm's success. Members of AIM receive access to resources to help in their job and establish their reputation as a skilled professional, a network of peers who face the same industry challenges and can offer solutions, and a wide range of professional development and networking opportunities. Join AIM today. To learn more, visit the website at accountingmarketing.org. Again, that's accountingmarketing.org.
All right, welcome back. So, Josh, marketing and selling advisory typically takes different effort and resources, sometimes more effort and resources. Are you seeing that? Are you budgeting for that?
Yeah, actually, so we have found that a lot of these project-based advisory services, consulting services, are actually a little bit easier of a sell than asking a client to change their provider for some of the compliance services. And so, in fact, we do go to market with a lot of our project-based consulting services, but we find that they're more of a wedge service to build a relationship with the client initially when we don't have some of the compliance-based relationships. And often over time, that expands from some of those project-based consulting services into some of the compliance services. So that's been a nice fix for us. But I'd say we've experienced the opposite, that it's an easier sell to do a project-based consulting engagement than what is a big lift and a headache for folks to shift their accounting provider.
I think that's really good news for a lot of people out there, for sure. I have a background in consulting, so I feel the same way. I feel like it's just easier, and it's just always been, what I've been working in. But I think people see it sometimes as more of a barrier, just because it's the unknown. But the more you get into it, the more you work in it, I think it becomes a lot easier and super rewarding. So, final question. How do you see CPA firms evolving in the future as they bring on more advisory services and non-CPA partners to provide the work?
Yeah, so I think that our experience as a firm is, as we've offered more advisory services or consulting services, we have brought more, as you said, non-CPA partners to the table, and that's been a really interesting voice to add to the mix. It's also created additional microcultures within our firm. We have a technology services group that's brought in, where the culture within that organization is quite a bit different than some of our tax department, for example. I love that. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It makes MarksNelson overall a great place. We're aligned in values and the importance of providing exceptional service to our clients and great professional development to our team. But the way that they do work is a little bit different than some of our compliance folks, and that's the same for every other advisory group that we've brought into the mix here. There's these microcultures that pop up, and again, I think you have to be able to embrace that. It's going to change the culture and the feel of what it's like to be in a lot of these firms. But for example, we've had folks talking about the impact of AI on our industry and what's coming for a long time, because that's the world they're from and that's the way that they think. And so it's kept us a little bit more on the cutting edge and a little bit more of an exciting place to work. So I think that's exciting. I also think that the way that M&A is done in our space is going to continue to evolve as well. For MarksNelson, when we look at bringing in a new consulting service, we meet internally once a year and visit sort of this list of consulting services that are important to add to our portfolio. We prioritize that list, but then we focus much more on who, not how, we launch that service. And so we out there looking for a good champion, whether it's a strategic hire or an acquisition target. Increasingly, especially at our size, it's good to look at acquisition targets. You don't want to dabble in these service areas, right? You want, if you're going to bring it to a client, maintain that reputation of being their trusted business advisor, you want to have folks that are seasoned in providing the service. And we have found great luck in acquiring our way into some of these service offerings. But doing M&A deals with advisory service groups is a little bit different than the traditional CPA firm M&A model. You kind of get a different reaction when you're talking to a technology company or a wealth management organization or someone in that space, when you're talking about these deferred comp models and things like that, versus what they're used to. And so I think that's going to change. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why MarksNelson recently engaged with a private equity partner, Trinity Hunt Partners, to help us execute at scale and speed with some of the M&A, specifically in the advisory space. So I think that's going to continue to change as well.
That was such an innovative strategy, you all going through that. And one thing I'll say about you, every time I spoke with you during the pandemic about the expansion and the growth and the innovative things that you were doing, it blew my socks off. And so I'm always hearing embrace different, embrace non-traditional. And I'm looking forward to having you on our M&A panel coming up too at the Super Conference. Can't wait to hear more about that. So
overall, Angie, I was going to say overall, that capacity for change that you just mentioned there is so incredibly important for every firm, whether you're looking to grow advisory or not. Just having the capacity for change within your organization, to me, is absolutely essential. I think many organizations found that the experience with the pandemic zapped a lot of their capacity for change, just because we all had to deal with so much change in such a short period of time, whether it was change in tax code, change to work environment, whatever it might be. We have to press past that exhaustion and continue to allow our firms to flex that muscle of ability and capacity for change in order to keep pace with what our clients are going to expect, what our team members are going to expect, and what it's going to take to build a sustainable and growing firm. That's what we're focused on here at MarksNelson. I think many others should embrace that as well.
That's a really interesting point. It's sort of like when you work out, you feel depleted, but honestly, what you're doing is you're building that muscle. And I think that's what the pandemic did for so many people. It built that change muscle. So I'm looking forward to seeing where our profession goes from here. It has been so great chatting with you. You've provided some incredible insights regarding advisory and accounting firms. Thank you so much for being here. Josh, how can our audience best get in touch with you or find out more about you and your work?
Sure. So email is the best way to reach me, jbeck@mnadvisors.com. I'd welcome anybody to reach out anytime. And of course, I'll be at Super Conference in Dallas this summer. Looking forward to working with you and being on the panel with some others that are going to be there as well.
Great. Thanks, Josh, so much. Well, this is it for another episode of Amplify, the podcast for accounting firm growth. Thank you so much for listening in. Let us know what you think about this episode on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. And if you want to find out more about Amplify and all of our episodes, head over to accountingmarketing.org. You'll find the podcast under publications. And if you'd like to find out more about me and my company, the Rainmaker Companies, head over to therainmakercompanies.com or email me at Angie@therainmakercompanies.com. See you next time.